Look, I've been stationed on the Galactic Council's diplomatic vessel for approximately 7 standard cycles now, and I thought I'd seen everything. I'm Zixthar, a Volundian observer, which means my entire species evolved to literally just watch things and take notes. We're really good at it. We've got 4 eyes, exceptional memory, and absolutely 0 practical survival skills. We're the galaxy's professional bystanders, if you will. But humans? Oh, humans. They just had to go and make my job interesting, didn't they? According to YouTube analytics, 98% of viewers are not subscribed. That's a huge number. By subscribing the channel that is completely free, you'll help support the channel and never miss fresh content. The incident I'm about to describe took place on Refuge Station Epsilon, a peaceful trading hub orbiting a lovely Class M planet with the most boring name imaginable, Kepler 442-b-3. The bureaucrats who name these things must be fun at parties. The station hosted about 40 different species, all supposedly getting along because we're civilized now. Thank you very much. We have laws, we have procedures, we have 17 different committees dedicated to filing reports about other committees. Enter Marcus Webb, the Human Ambassador's security chief. Now, Marcus was what humans call built like a brick house, which I'm told is a compliment, though why anyone would want to resemble construction materials is beyond me. He stood roughly 2 meters tall, had shoulders that could probably support a small spacecraft, and possessed this utterly ridiculous smile that made him look like he was constantly in on some joke the rest of us hadn't heard yet. The humans had been on the station for about 6 rotations, and we'd already had 3 incident reports. Not because they were violent or aggressive, mind you. No, it was because they kept doing things like reorganizing the cafeteria because the flow was inefficient, fixing broken equipment that had been marked for replacement, and, in one memorable instance, teaching the Xylithan janitor how to play something called poker. The Xylithans don't even have hands. They managed anyway. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you about the Korthax. The Korthax are what we politely call apex predators, and what everyone else calls absolutely terrifying. They're massive, about 3 meters at the shoulder when on all 6 limbs, covered in midnight black fur that seems to absorb light, with teeth designed by some cruel evolutionary force that apparently thought normal teeth weren't dramatic enough. Their eyes glow amber in low light. They have retractable claws that can shred through standard hull plating. Their native planet has 3 times standard gravity and considers aggressive megafauna a minor inconvenience. In short, they're the species you don't want to meet in a dark corridor, or a well-lit corridor, or really anywhere if you value your internal organs remaining internal. The Korthax delegation was led by Huntmaster Vexral, who spoke in this deep, rumbling bass that you could feel in your secondary stomachs. She was professional, diplomatic, and had only growled at someone twice during the entire summit. Progress, really. She'd brought her family unit with her, which included her mate Korvan and their cub, Shixali. Now, Shixali was, by Korthax standards, adorable. By anyone else's standards, Shixali was a 100-kilogram ball of teeth, claws, and what humans apparently call zoomies. The cub was only 3 solar cycles old, which meant Shixali had all the predatory instincts of an adult Korthax with precisely none of the impulse control. Watching Shixali try to hunt the station's maintenance drones was like watching a natural disaster in slow motion, an enthusiastic, slightly clumsy natural disaster that kept tripping over its own paws. The station had this recreational area with an artificial river system. Some genius engineer had decided that running water would be calming for the various species. They'd even stocked it with bioluminescent fish that were supposed to be soothing to watch. The water was about 4 meters deep in the center, with a current strong enough to be interesting but not, immediately fatal. On the day in question, I was doing my job, which involved standing near a decorative plant and looking observant. I'm exceptional at this. Marcus was nearby, ostensibly providing security but actually teaching Ambassador Chen's aide how to juggle, with cleaning supplies, because of course he was. Shixley had been prowling around the river's edge, watching the fish with the intensity of, well, an apex predator who just discovered moving targets. Huntmaster Vexral was in a diplomatic meeting, and Corvan had stepped away for approximately 30 seconds to speak with a trade representative. This is when the universe decided to demonstrate its sense of humor. One of those bioluminescent fish made the catastrophic error of jumping. Just a little hop, really. Barely cleared the water. But to Shixley, this was apparently the most offensive thing that had ever happened in the history of offensive things. The cub launched forward with all the grace of a small starship with engine failure, paws scrabbling on the decorative stones, and went directly into the river with a splash that probably violated several noise ordinances. Here's the thing about Korthax. They're exceptional hunters. They can track prey across continents. They can coordinate pack tactics that would make military strategists weep with envy. They can hear a heartbeat from 50 meters away. They cannot swim. Well, adult Korthax can manage a sort of aggressive doggy paddle if you hold a blaster to their head and demand it. But cubs are basically furry rocks with attitude problems. Shixley went down like someone had attached an anchor to a very surprised, very angry throw pillow. I saw the cub go under, watched the bubbles rise, and immediately began calculating the proper diplomatic channels to report this tragedy. There would be forms. So many forms. The Korthax would probably declare a blood feud against the fish. This was going to be a nightmare of paperwork. Corvan roared, a sound that made everyone within 50 meters reconsider their life choices. He started running toward the river, but he was at least 20 meters away, and you could see in his eyes that he knew he wouldn't make it in time. And that's when Marcus Webb did the most astoundingly stupid thing I have ever witnessed. He jumped in, just yeeted himself right off the decorative bridge, didn't even break stride. 1 second he was juggling a mop and 2 spray bottles, the next he was airborne. And then he was in the water, moving toward the drowning predator cub with the confidence of someone who'd apparently never been introduced to the concept of self-preservation. I should mention that the entire station knew the Korthax were predators. We'd all read the briefings. We'd all seen the videos from their homeworld, where they hunted things that made our nightmares look like pleasant daydreams. We knew that a panicking Korthax could eviscerate someone in about 3 seconds, and that's if they were being slow about it. Marcus apparently missed that meeting. He dove under the surface, and I lost sight of him for approximately 4.3 seconds, which I know because I counted them very carefully while having what I believe humans call a heart attack, despite the fact that Volundians don't technically have hearts in the traditional sense. When Marcus surfaced, he had Shixley. Just wrapped one arm around the cub's midsection and started swimming toward the edge with smooth, powerful strokes that made it look absurdly easy. Shixley, presumably operating on pure instinct, immediately started thrashing like a blender having an existential crisis. Those claws I mentioned, the ones that can shred hull plating? Shixley was absolutely shredding Marcus. I could see the water turning pink. Not a lot, but enough to make it very clear that the human was being actively perforated by the thing he was trying to save. And Marcus just kept swimming. By this point, Corvan had reached the river's edge, making sounds that I'm fairly certain were Korthax profanity, but could also have been prayers. Possibly both. Several other species had gathered, including a Thexian who'd started recording because apparently documenting tragedy is a universal constant. Marcus reached the edge, and here's where it got really interesting. He didn't just hand the cub over. No, that would be too simple. He actually lifted Shixley up and out of the water, holding the panicking ball of claws and teeth at arm's length while his own arms were bleeding from multiple lacerations, and gently placed the cub on the deck. Shixley immediately shook like a wet predator cub, spraying water everywhere, and then promptly vomited river water all over Marcus's boots. The human didn't even flinch. He just pulled himself out of the water, looked down at his shredded forearms, which were bleeding quite impressively now, and said, and I quote, "Yeah, that's fair." Corvan was making this high-pitched keening sound that the translation matrix was struggling with, oscillating between "thank you" and "I will kill you" and "what is wrong with you." He was checking Shixley over with the franticness of a parent who just watched their offspring nearly die, while Shixley, for their part, seemed mostly annoyed about being wet. By now, a crowd had gathered. Ambassador Chen came running with the medical team. The station security chief, Avrel, who'd seen approximately 300 cycles and thought she'd witnessed everything, just stood there with her mouth open. The medical officer, a competent Rillian named Healer Kix, took one look at Marcus's arms and made a sound like air escaping from a damaged seal. The cuts were deep, plural. We're talking at least 15 distinct lacerations, some of them down to the muscle. The human had basically used his own flesh as a safety barrier between himself and the cub's panic. "You need immediate medical attention," Healer Kix said, already pulling out dermal regenerators. Marcus looked at his arms like he'd just noticed them. "Oh, yeah, got a little scratched up." The little guy was scared. Didn't mean anything by it. The human had just been mauled by an apex predator cub and was making excuses for it. That's when Huntmaster Vexral arrived. Someone had alerted her during the meeting, and she'd apparently sprinted through 3 sections of the station. She took in the scene in about half a second. Her soaking wet, traumatized but living cub. Her mate who looked like he'd aged 10 cycles in as many minutes, and the bleeding human who was trying to wave off medical attention. The Huntmaster walked up to Marcus, and every single person in that corridor went absolutely silent. Korthak's body language is fairly easy to read when they're angry. The fur stands up, the ears go back, the claws extend. Vexral was doing all of those things. She also had tears in her eyes, which on a Korthax is extremely difficult to spot because their tear ducts work differently. But I have 4 eyes, and I was paying attention. "You saved my cub," she said. Her voice was doing this thing where it was half growl, half something else entirely. Marcus, still dripping river water and blood, gave her that ridiculous smile. Couldn't just let the kiddo drown. Kids do dumb stuff. That's kind of their whole deal. Shixley could have killed you. The panic, the claws, it is instinct. Yeah, but Shixley didn't mean to, just scared. Marcus looked down at the cub, who was now trying to hide behind Corvan's leg, while simultaneously trying to maintain dignity. "You okay, little buddy?" And Shixley, an apex predator from a death world, a creature designed by evolution to be an efficient killing machine, made a small chirping sound and nodded. "I need you to understand something about Korthak's culture. They value strength. They value courage. But more than anything, they value the pack, the family unit. The idea that this human, this creature from a species the Korthaks had barely interacted with, had risked his life for a cub that wasn't even his own species without a moment's hesitation, that broke something fundamental in Huntmaster Vexral's understanding of the universe. She placed one massive paw on Marcus's shoulder, careful not to use the claws. "You have given me a debt I cannot repay." "No debt," Marcus said immediately. "Seriously, anyone would have done the same thing." Here's the thing. He actually believed that. The human genuinely thought that jumping into a river to save a drowning predator cub that could easily kill him was just normal behavior that anyone would exhibit. I looked around at the assembled crowd. Approximately 30 different species, all of whom had stood there and watched because we were calculating risk-benefit ratios and considering diplomatic ramifications and thinking about all the very sensible reasons not to jump into a river after an apex predator. The human had just jumped. "No," Vexral said quietly. "No, they would not have. My people have a saying. The strength of the pack is measured not in the hunt, but in who you protect when there is nothing to gain." She turned to address the crowd, her voice carrying that diplomatic authority she usually reserved for formal proceedings. "Let it be known that Marcus Webb of Earth has this day become shield brother to the Vexral pack. Our honor is his honor. Our enemies are his enemies. Our lives are his to call upon." Marcus looked confused. "I don't think your HR department approved that." "Our cubs are our HR department. Corvan rumbled, a hint of amusement in his voice despite the trauma of the last few minutes. And Shixley approves. The cub, hearing their name, chirped again and did this little pounce movement toward Marcus, then seemed to remember the whole nearly drowning thing and thought better of it. Ambassador Chen looked like she was trying very hard not to laugh. Marcus, you just got adopted by the Korthax hegemony's most influential family. Is that good? That's very good. Also very strange. Also, please let the healer fix your arms before you pass out from blood loss. Oh, right. The blood loss. In all the excitement, I'd almost forgotten Marcus was still actively bleeding. Healer Kix was making increasingly distressed sounds and had already started applying dermal regenerators without waiting for permission. Marcus sat down, finally, and let the healer work. Shixley crept closer, still dripping, and made a low sound that the translation matrix rendered as sorry. Hey, no worries, buddy, Marcus said, and actually reached out to pat the cub on the head with his injured arm. While it was being treated, the healer made a sound like a deflating balloon. Shixley leaned into the touch, purring. Actual purring. I'd read the Korthax physiological reports. They're not supposed to purr. They're supposed to growl, roar, and occasionally make sounds that cause psychological damage to prey species. Purring was not on the list. Well, I said to nobody in particular, because I felt like someone should document this for the records, that happened. The Thexian who'd been recording nodded enthusiastically. This is going on the neural net. Humans are insane. This is beautiful. Over the next few rotations, the story spread through the station like some kind of bizarre virus. The human who jumped in the river became the most repeated phrase I heard. It got embellished naturally. In some versions, the river was in flood stage. In others, there were dangerous aquatic predators. One creative Zeltron claimed Marcus had fought off a river kraken, which was impressive considering river krakens don't exist. But the core story remained the same. The human saw a drowning child and just jumped in. Didn't calculate the risk, didn't consider the species, didn't think about the diplomatic ramifications or the possibility of serious injury, or the fact that he was jumping in to save something that could easily kill him. He just jumped. The Korthax delegation's entire attitude toward humans changed overnight. Vexral requested a private meeting with Ambassador Chen to discuss closer cooperation between their peoples. Corvan started joining the humans for their communal meals, which was hilarious because watching a 3-meter apex predator try to figure out chopsticks is entertainment I will cherish forever. And Shixley decided that Marcus was now their favorite person in the entire galaxy. The cub followed him around whenever possible, which made Marcus's security duties interesting. Try looking intimidating when you have a 100-kilogram predator cub treating you like a mobile climbing structure. I watched Marcus during a formal dinner about 2 rotations after the incident. His arms were healed mostly, though he'd have some impressive scars. Shixley was asleep under the table, paws on Marcus's boots. Huntmaster Vexral was discussing trade agreements with Ambassador Chen, but kept glancing over at her cub with this expression that I'd learned to recognize as Korthax gratitude. You know what the weird part is? Marcus said to me quietly. We'd started talking more after the incident. Turns out humans are very friendly when you show interest in their bizarre behavior patterns. What's that? I asked. Everyone keeps acting like I did something special. But I keep thinking, what if I hadn't jumped? What if I'd stood there and done the math and calculated the risks and decided it was too dangerous? He shook his head. I'd never be able to live with myself. How do you live with yourself when you could have helped and chose not to? And there it was. The fundamental difference I'd been trying to articulate in my reports. Most species, we calculate. We consider. We think about all the very reasonable reasons why something might be a bad idea. Humans just ask themselves a simple question. Can I help? If the answer is yes, they move. They don't think about whether they should. They don't calculate the risk-benefit ratio. They see someone who needs help, and they help. It's not bravery, exactly, or at least not how most species define bravery. It's something more fundamental than that. It's not even a choice for them. It's just what they do. The summit concluded 3 rotations later with unprecedented success. The Korthax hegemony signed mutual defense pacts with 17 species, including humanity. Trade routes were established. Cultural exchange programs were initiated. The entire diplomatic landscape of this sector shifted because a human jumped into a river. But the real changes were smaller, more personal. I observed Shixley teaching human children how to track prey in the station's arboretum. The irony of apex predator cubs and human younglings playing together wasn't lost on anyone. But watching them interact, you could see something profound happening. The human children weren't afraid. They laughed when Shixley pounced. They took turns being the prey in elaborate games of chase, and Shixley was gentle with them, careful. The same claws that had shredded Marcus's arms remained carefully sheathed during play. It was like watching evolution happen in real time, 2 species learning to be family. Korvan told me something interesting during one of our conversations. He said that in all of Korthax history, they'd never seen another species protect a Korthax cub. Their alliances were built on mutual benefit, on calculated exchanges of resources and military support. The concept of someone risking death for their young simply because it was the right thing to do, that was new. We thought we understood strength, he told me, his amber eyes reflecting the station's lights. We measured it in claws, in teeth, in the ability to hunt and kill. But Marcus showed us a different kind of strength. The strength to act when action might cost you everything. The strength to care when caring makes no logical sense. He paused, watching Marcus attempt to teach Shixley how to play fetch, which was going about as well as you'd expect when you try to teach an apex predator to retrieve things instead of hunt them. Humans are dangerous, Korvan continued, not because they are strong or clever or technologically advanced. They are dangerous because they make you want to be better. They make you question everything you thought you knew about the universe. And then they befriend your children, and suddenly you cannot imagine a galaxy without them in it. Ambassador Chen overheard this and smiled. That's probably the nicest threat I've ever received. It is not a threat, Korvan rumbled. It is a warning to the rest of the galaxy. Humanity has allies now, real allies, the kind who will jump into rivers for each other's cubs. The story spread beyond the station. Within a lunar cycle, I started receiving requests from other observers, other species, wanting to know more about humanity. The river incident became a case study in xenopsychology courses. 3 different universities wanted to interview Marcus, who declined because, and I quote, "I just pulled a kid out of water, I don't need a parade about it." But the galaxy disagreed. The galaxy very much thought this warranted attention. The Thexian's recording went viral across 200 systems. I watched it analyzed frame by species who wanted to understand the exact moment when Marcus decided to jump. They were looking for calculation, for hesitation, for the moment of decision. They never found it, because there was no moment of decision. Marcus saw a child drowning and his body moved before his brain even processed the danger. That's what they couldn't understand. That's what made the footage so fascinating to so many species. We don't move like that. We think first, we assess, we calculate probabilities and weigh outcomes. Humans just move. 6 lunar cycles after the incident, the Galactic Council formally invited humanity to join as a full member species, rather than an observer. The vote was unanimous. During the ceremony, Huntmaster Vexral gave a speech that I recorded in its entirety. We invite humanity not because they are powerful, though they are, not because they are innovative, though they have proven to be. We invite them because they have shown us what we had forgotten. That civilization is not measured by the strength of our weapons or the efficiency of our commerce. It is measured by who we choose to save when saving them costs us everything. Marcus attended the ceremony with Shixley, who was now almost twice the size, but still treated Marcus like a combination climbing structure and security blanket. The cub wore a ceremonial sash declaring them an ambassador of friendship, which was adorable. until you remembered that Shixley could now bite through titanium. After the ceremony, I finally filed my final report. 23 pages, single-spaced, detailing everything I'd observed about humanity during their time on the station. But I think the most important observation came in my conclusion. Other species have asked me to identify humanity's greatest weakness, the vulnerability that might be exploited in future conflicts. I must report that I have identified this weakness. Humans cannot walk away from someone in need. They cannot perform the logical calculation that their life is worth more than a stranger's. They will throw themselves into danger for people they've never met, for species they barely understand, for causes that offer them no benefit. This is not a weakness to exploit. Any species that attempts to use humanity's compassion against them will discover that humans have friends now, real friends. The kind of friends who remember when someone jumped into a river for their child. The kind of friends who will jump into rivers too. I submitted my report and requested reassignment. Not because I wanted to leave, but because my job as an observer was complete. You can't objectively observe people who've become your friends, and Marcus had made sure that everyone on that station was his friend, whether they wanted to be or not. My final entry in the station logs was simple. Humanity approved for full council membership. Observer Zixthar recommends immediate integration. Humanity will either save us all or drive us collectively insane with their ridiculous heroics. Possibly both. As I packed my belongings, Marcus found me in my quarters. Shixley was with him, of course, now wearing a small vest that read, Emotional Support Apex Predator, in 3 languages. Heard you're shipping out, Marcus said. My assignment is complete. You're not observers anymore. You're full members of the galactic community. Because I pulled a kid out of a river. Because you jumped without thinking. Because you showed the galaxy something we'd forgotten how to do. Marcus looked uncomfortable with the praise, which was very on brand for humans. I just did what anyone should do. Yes, I said. That's exactly the point. You did what anyone should do. And now, because of you, maybe more of us will. Shixley chirped and headbutted Marcus's leg affectionately, nearly knocking him over. The human laughed and scratched behind the cub's ears, in the exact spot that Korthaks love but would never admit to loving. Take care of yourself, Zix, Marcus said. And hey, if you ever need someone to jump into a river for you, you know where to find me. I left the station 3 rotations later, but I kept track of Marcus Webb and Shixley. Everyone did. They became something of a galactic odd couple, the human security chief and his apex predator best friend. They attended diplomatic functions together. They mediated disputes. They somehow ended up stopping 2 assassination attempts, 3 smuggling rings, and 1 ill-advised invasion by a species who thought humans would be easy targets. They were not easy targets, especially when they had friends who remembered the river. 5 solar cycles later, I received an invitation. Marcus was getting married to a xenobiologist named Dr. Lisa Chen, Ambassador Chen's niece. The ceremony would be held on Earth, and I was cordially invited as a guest of honor. I attended naturally. So did half the Galactic Council. So did Vexral, Korvan, and Shixley, who was now fully grown and served as what humans call the best man, despite being neither a man nor particularly well-behaved. During the reception, I found myself standing next to Korvan, watching Marcus dance with his new wife while Shixley attempted to learn the steps. Do you ever wonder, Korvan said quietly, what the galaxy would look like if everyone was more like them? I thought about it. A galaxy full of beings who jumped into rivers, who helped without calculating the cost, who made friends out of everyone they met and turned enemies into allies through the simple expedient of treating them with kindness. It would be chaos, I said. Yes, Korvan agreed. Beautiful, wonderful chaos. And watching Marcus try to teach an apex predator the waltz while his wife laughed and the combined delegations of 40 species celebrated together, I had to agree. The human had jumped into a river, and the galaxy had jumped in after him. The end.